I'm a 32-year-old guy who has always prided myself on being the reliable one in my family. I was the one who made it out of our small town, secured a successful job in the big city, and returned every Christmas loaded with gifts and cash. This year was meant to be no different, and I wanted it to be even more special. But instead, I found myself in a situation that shattered my idealized image of family and forced me to confront some hard truths about the people I thought I knew best. My girlfriend and I had been together for about a year, and I was thrilled to finally introduce her to my family. She'd heard endless stories about our lively holiday gatherings. The way my mom's eyes lit up when we all sang off-key carols, my dad's famously bad jokes that somehow got funnier after a few eggnogs, and the pure joy on my nieces' and nephews' faces as they tore into their presents. I'd painted a picture of a festive, joyful family, and she was genuinely excited to experience it. As we arrived at my parents' house, with its windows warmly glowing against the snowy backdrop, I felt a surge of pride. "Ready to meet the clan?" I asked, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. She nodded, a mix of excitement and nerves on her face. "As ready as I'll ever be. Are you sure they'll like me?" I laughed and kissed her cheek. "They're going to love you. Trust me. By the end of the night, they'll probably like you more than they like me." I didn't realize just how prophetic those words would be. Initially, everything seemed perfect. My mom gave my girlfriend a big, warm hug, admiring her and saying how pretty she was. My dad cracked his usual "welcome to the madhouse" joke, and my siblings and their spouses greeted us warmly. The kids buzzed with excitement, their eyes glued to the pile of gifts we'd brought. As we settled in, I began noticing a few strange exchanges, whispered conversations that quickly ended when I walked over, and strange looks passed between my siblings. I brushed it off, caught up in the joy of being home, and eager to introduce my girlfriend to my family. Dinner was lively and full of catching up. My girlfriend charmed everyone with her quick wit and genuine interest in their lives. I felt a swelling pride as I watched how seamlessly she fit into the family dynamic. But when dinner was over and we gathered in the living room to start the gift exchange, things began to feel strange. Before we could open any presents, my older sister announced with a mischievous glint in her eye, "We thought it would be fun to play a little game." I sensed something was off, noticing the way the adults exchanged knowing looks while the kids buzzed with barely contained excitement. But with my holiday cheer running high, and perhaps one too many glasses of wine, I went along with it. "Sure, why not?" I said. "What kind of game?" My brother-in-law brought out a small box, grinning widely. "It's a trust exercise," he explained. "You and your lovely girlfriend will be blindfolded and guided through a series of simple tasks. It's all about building connection and having a laugh." Looking back, I'm shocked at how naive I was. But in that moment, surrounded by the people I trusted most in the world, I didn't think to question it. They tied the blindfolds around our eyes, and I heard muffled giggles and whispers. I felt a slight twinge of unease in my stomach, but I ignored it, telling myself it was just my family's way of having fun. The game began innocently enough. We were guided to touch different objects, and guess what they were? But then things took a strange turn. They told me to stick my hand into something cold and slimy. They handed my girlfriend what they said was an apple, but it turned out to be an onion. I started to protest, but my family members kept insisting it was all in good fun. "Come on, don't be a spoiled sport," my younger brother teased. "It's just a harmless prank." But it didn't stop there. They spun us in circles until we were dizzy, then instructed us to walk in a straight line. Water balloons came next, which they claimed were snowballs we had to dodge. At one point, I heard the sound of a razor buzzing close to my head, followed by my girlfriend's shocked gasp. That was the breaking point for me. I ripped off my blindfold, ready to demand an explanation, and froze at the sight before me. My girlfriend stood there, mascara streaking down her face from the water balloons. Her beautiful hair was uneven, with chunks missing. I touched my own head, realizing they'd shaved random patches. What disturbed me even more was the look on my family's faces. They were laughing, not with the gentle, affectionate humor of a harmless prank, but with a cruel, mocking laughter that sent a chill down my spine. "What the hell is wrong with you people?" I shouted, moving to comfort my visibly shaken girlfriend. My mother, still laughing, wiped tears from her eyes. "Oh, honey, we were just having a bit of fun. Don't be so sensitive." I was speechless. "You call humiliating us in front of everyone fun?" My father's voice was dismissive as he replied, "Come on, son. It's just a prank. We do this to all the newcomers. It's tradition." I looked around the room, hoping to see at least one sympathetic face, but all I saw were amused smirks and rolling eyes. Even the kids seemed to find it funny. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some out-of-character moment of cruelty. This was who they really were, who they'd always been. All those Christmases when I'd come home, showering them with expensive gifts and feeling their adoration. It had all been an illusion. They'd played along to keep the golden goose happy, so I'd keep funding their lifestyles. The realization hit me with a cold fury. I silently took my girlfriend's hand and led her upstairs to clean up. "I am so sorry," I whispered, trying to fix her hair as best I could. I had no idea they were like this. "I swear, if I'd known." She squeezed my hand, her eyes sad but understanding. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." But deep down, I realized I did know. There had always been subtle signs. The passive-aggressive comments, the put-downs, the way they always seemed to need money for one emergency or another. I'd just chosen to ignore them. Once we were ready to leave, I went back downstairs, gathered up every single gift I'd brought, even the ones for the kids, and left without a word. If this was who my family truly was, I wanted no part in it. As the year approached its end, I was gearing up to give my family an extra special Christmas. Every December, I returned to our small town from the city with expensive gifts, ready to make our holiday gatherings memorable. This year was particularly important because, for the first time, I was bringing along my girlfriend, someone I truly cared about and wanted my family to meet. We'd been together for a year, and after hearing so many stories of my family's festive traditions, she was excited to join in. As we drove up to my parents' house, with snow blanketing the landscape, I felt a rush of pride. This was my chance to show her the family that had always meant so much to me. As we stepped inside, my mom greeted my girlfriend with a warm hug, and my dad cracked his usual joke about our madhouse. The kids buzzed around, glancing at the stack of presents we brought, and everything seemed perfect. My siblings, their spouses, and even the kids welcomed her as if she'd always been part of the family. But as the evening wore on, I noticed strange glances and hushed whispers that ceased whenever I walked near. I brushed it off, telling myself that my family wouldn't act strangely on a day as special as this. Dinner was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. My girlfriend's warmth and genuine interest in their lives charmed everyone, and I couldn't have been happier. However, the joyful atmosphere quickly changed after we finished eating, as my sister made an unusual announcement. "Before we start the gift exchange, we thought it'd be fun to play a little game," she said, her tone suggesting more than mere fun. At first, I was hesitant, but I shrugged it off, too caught up in the holiday cheer to question it. When my brother-in-law handed us blindfolds and explained that it was a trust exercise, I went along with it, wanting to be a good sport. After all, this was my family, and I had no reason to doubt them. The game started innocently enough, with us being asked to guess various objects by touch. But soon, it took a turn for the worse. They had us touching slimy, cold items, and tricked my girlfriend into biting into an onion, thinking it was an apple. I started to protest, but my family just laughed it off, insisting it was harmless fun. The activities grew increasingly humiliating. They spun us in circles until we were dizzy, drenched us with water balloons under the pretense of dodging snow, and worst of all, I heard the distinct buzzing of a razor. Alarmed, I reached up to touch my head, only to feel patches of unevenly cut hair. I ripped off my blindfold and turned to find my girlfriend beside me, mascara streaking down her cheeks from the water, with a chunk of her hair missing. The room burst into cruel laughter, and my family, who I'd always thought of as loving and supportive, stood there with mocking grins. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted, moving to comfort my girlfriend. My mother, wiping away tears of laughter, had the nerve to say, "Oh, honey, don't be so sensitive. It was just a bit of fun." The room was silent for a moment, with all eyes on me, as I glared at them in disbelief. But my father's dismissive tone cut through. "It's just a tradition, son. We do this to all the newcomers." His words stung. My mind raced back over all the Christmases I'd spent here, showering them with gifts and love, only to realize that I might have been more of an outsider than I ever knew. The laughter, the gifts, the traditions. Had it all been a way to keep me around, to ensure I'd keep funding their celebrations? Something inside me snapped. I walked over to the Christmas tree, picked up the first present, an expensive gaming console for my nephew, and headed straight for the front door. I could feel everyone's stunned eyes on me as I started loading every gift back into my car. They shouted, demanded explanations, and tried to reason with me. But I ignored them, moving mechanically to reclaim everything I'd brought. My brother grabbed at one of the gifts, yelling, "You can't do this. Those are ours." I fixed him with a cold glare and replied, "No, they're mine. And until I give them to you, you don't deserve a damn thing from me." Seeing her manipulation fall flat, my mother switched to playing the victim, tears streaming down her face. "How can you be so cruel? It's Christmas." "Cruel?" I laughed bitterly, my voice thick with anger. "You call this cruelty? Look at what you did to us tonight. Look at the way you humiliated me and the woman I love. For what? A few cheap laughs?" I turned to my father, whose face was now red with anger. He tried to scold me, saying I was overreacting, but I wasn't having any of it. "I'll show you what overreacting looks like," I snapped, slamming the trunk shut. Just as I climbed into the car, my young niece tugged on my sleeve, looking up at me with tearful eyes. "Uncle, please," she whispered. "We didn't mean to be bad. Don't take our presents." For a moment, I softened, thinking maybe the kids didn't deserve to be punished. But then, I remembered the laughter, how they had eagerly joined in, learning from the adults that this was acceptable behavior. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said gently, "but actions have consequences. Maybe next year, if you learn to treat people with kindness, things will be different." My girlfriend, who had been by my side through this entire ordeal, climbed in beside me as we drove off. The silence was heavy, both of us lost in thought until she finally spoke. "Are you okay?" she asked, squeezing my hand. Surprisingly, I felt a strange sense of peace. "Yeah," I replied. "For the first time in a long time, I feel free." She smiled, her eyes filled with admiration. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and I knew then that I'd made the right choice. As we reached the city, a thought crossed my mind. "We've got a car full of presents and nowhere to take them," I said with a faint smile. My girlfriend grinned, catching on immediately. "I bet the children's hospital could use a little extra holiday cheer." And just like that, a new Christmas tradition was born. We spent the rest of the night delivering the gifts to places where they would be truly appreciated. In the following weeks, I dealt with angry phone calls, guilt-tripping texts, and relatives trying to talk some sense into me. But I held firm, setting boundaries for the first time and choosing my own well-being over their expectations. With time, I built a life filled with people who truly valued and respected me. A few years later, my girlfriend and I got married and started our own family. We established holiday traditions grounded in love, kindness, and genuine connection. And while there's still a pang of sadness when I think of those idealized Christmases of my youth, I know now that the greatest gift I could have given myself was the courage to walk away from relationships that no longer serve me.